everyone! Pineapple here with the new Netflix series based loosely on the manga Kakegurui, Bet. Now, I have a history of looking at the Kakegurui anime, loving a lot about it, but also having issues from its production and tone. And although I haven't got around to talking about how much I love the Japanese live action as much as I'd like, I did talk about that and Bet before. Now, the video I did before is a bit outdated and has a bit of misinformation, as it was written and posted right as the first trailer released. Little being known, and thank God not all of the things we criticised turned out to be true. Now, where Bet was assumed as a cheap money grab of an adaptation with woke ideals or whatever, I was excited to watch, as I knew whether it would be bad or good, I'd still enjoy it. And much like the Japanese live action, Bet surprised me. So let's start with how Bet may not be a good adaptation, but is still a pretty good piece of young adult dark comedy / drama, like a more niche Wednesday. There are 3 key points I can see in why the anime was so popular: the characters, the games, and the sex appeal. Now, I love anime titties as much as the next person, but the sex overtaking the characters and games was the main thing that turned me off the anime. This is resolved in both live actions. Sure, sex is brought up in Bet, but in neither live actions are Yumiko's jiggly shoved in your face. So both live actions trump the anime tonally for me. So what about the games? Well, the games were translated perfectly in the Japanese live action, but here mostly new games are played, and those that come over are used at the wrong time with the wrong characters or diminished drastically. And we'll talk about how this works for and against Bet in a second. Lastly is the way the characters are designed. In the anime, the characters are either bland as paper like Ryota, purposefully so, or representing almost forces of nature. Kirari and Yumiko representing chaos Midari, while a character I detest in the original, and only the original, has a great dynamic with others thanks to her driving force, same with Runa and Igarashi. But in the live action, many of these characters, but not all, became more three-dimensional. Runa, Kirari, Yumiko all still represented the same values, but felt more alive. More three-dimensional thanks to both writing and being three-dimensional, being played by physical actors. Now, this is where Bet comes in. Netflix has a history of displaying adaptations as canon, following, and then pulling the rug out from the audience. Working well for Scott Pilgrim takes off, but for Bet, the drastic shift made it seem like it was furthering the trend of Americanizations, of fixing what ain't broke. But in truth, this is a whole new story, only built off the initial Kakegurui idea and parts of the characters taken. For the first couple of episodes, I felt infuriated with how wishy-washy it was with adapting material, but halfway through, I was really into these new versions of the characters, and started appreciating the references more as just that. The characters, plot, and games are different, loosely based on the original, and Netflix really needed to push that fact, because fans of Kakegurui will probably be turned away in the beginning, and these poor reactions might stop new fans from getting into it. But the truth is, in this way, Bet is held back by Kakegurui. On its own, Bet is an interesting and serviceable show, but if you've seen the original, your enjoyment will probably depend on how you relate it to the original. I started off liking this for how bad of an adaptation it was, much like you enjoy a Neil Breen movie, and as it continued and did more of its own thing, I liked and appreciated it more. In a hierarchy of enjoyment, the anime is still pretty good, but at the bottom of the list, the Japanese live action at the top, and depending on the story element, Bet jumps from being in between the two quality-wise to just on the level of the other live action. Now, let's go through the episodes and see what works and what doesn't. The first episode starts with Billie Eilish. Wow, starting off with negative points from me. Anyway, Yumiko is introduced well, of course gambling, as I guess this teacher waits for students to be detained for gambling, and opens a fucking gambling racket afterwards. But the principal comes in exposing this, blaming the student and not the teacher telling her to gamble. Wow. The scene is nice, setting up Yumiko's drive and skill well, as it all goes according to Kakegurui. Her guardian picking her up and telling her well done, as she now has an excuse to go to the top gambling school, Hyakao Academy. Oh, wait. St. Dominic's. Okay, I guess Hyakao Academy would sound a little out of place if it were in North America. Now we get to see our first opening. Bet based on the manga Kakegurui. First of all, the opening is different every episode, and much like the One Piece live action, I am weak for that shit. So I love these, but it says pretty specifically based on Kakegurui, and I think a lot of bad press, well, at least some of it, would have disappeared if the marketing made sure people knew it was based on or inspired by, and wasn't going to be a straight adaptation. Just because that rug pull worked with Scott Pilgrim Takes Off doesn't mean it'll work all the time. And considering, just like there, this first episode takes a lot from the start of Kakegurui, meaning matching up as the show goes along, it needed that for Kakegurui fans who might just be turned off by some of these changes on principle. More mid-music plays as Yumiko prepares for her first day, and this is the first time the visual style really comes to play, and it's really effective. From interesting editing, nice insert visuals, and unique camera work. Over these 10 episodes, there are some really nice tricks used. Not like Daredevil Born Again where they had one trick and spammed it at the wrong times. Yumiko remembers her mother, our first hint that this Yumiko has a deeper character than in the anime, her way of gambling and rules coming from her mother's lessons. Or, as will be hinted at later, perhaps only what she believed her mother's lessons to be. Yumiko is played by Miku Martineau, and yeah, she's really good in the role, embodying Yumiko well, but while she holds the same values, she isn't just the one thing. She actually has a plot and wants of her own beyond gambling, and this made me like her a lot more. The original Yumiko is basically just an agent of chaos with sweaty flesh bags, entertaining but not exactly multi-layered. Here Yumiko works well off of all the characters. Seriously, she gets close to flirting with everyone, but she has really humanizing moments. Emotions that I just can't see anime Yumiko having, and this made me like her a lot more, making me wish she was a little more like this in the anime so I could personally relate to more characters than just the blank paper stand-in boy. The school is shown off well, actually verbally justifying why there aren't any teachers around, which I may be wrong about, but I can't remember the anime or other live actions talking about. And we come across Mary beating Ryan, obviously cheating, but winning and making him a house pet, revealing Mary is one of the school council, the top 10, which adds interestingly into the show from her relationship with Riri, and making her rise and falls feel all the more painful, a strange change, but one that I think pays off. I was a little pissed that the games aren't as unique as the original, them just playing a type of poker, no rock, paper, scissors cards, which is a little disappointing. Half his own character and half Ryota, as his sort of personality and story place is split in twain, is Ryan, played by Ayo Salonke. Now, Ryan is probably given the least to do of the center cast, but is still probably better explored than Ryota. His backstory is hinted at, but not explicitly confirmed, and while he is still the meek pushover type character, his crush on Yumiko and his shifting dynamic with Mary are pretty well explored. But I'll be waiting on a second season for his character to really shine, because it seems a lot of what he does is either based on how he reacts to or for Yumiko and Mary. He has good moments with the both, or on the way to Yumiko, but not much on his own. But he's likable enough. Now for Mary, and this is the first character we've talked about where the design is drastically different. Yumiko is on point, and no matter the ethnicity of the actor, Ryota was always just going to be generic guy. But Mary has a very specific hair color and style, and while the style is attempted, she is of course non-Asian or white, and not blonde. I usually insist that adapted characters are in two parts: design and character as in how they fit in the story and what their actions are, how they react to certain things, both being important. But this show is inspired, loosely adapting Kakegurui, not a one-to-one adaptation. I'd probably be a slight bit annoyed in the design shift if this were meant to be a one-to-one adaptation, but both her design and character are only inspired by Mary Saotome, and the actress Eve Edwards can be very charismatic, enough to make you not worry about it. Sure, the original's character designs are better on the whole, but Bet is supposed to have its own style and draw from Kakegurui, so Mary and a few of the other characters really fit here, as the most substantive part of Bet is the striking and unique style that, sure, Kakegurui inspired, but a lot of it comes straight from the creative team, as we'll talk about later. Kira is watching, and unlike the live action, boy does her lipstick look goofy as fuck in shots like this. Like, this is not how you make her stand out features pop. Kira is played by Clara Alexandrova, an adaptation of Kirari Momobami. And unlike Yumiko, Kirari's whole driving force isn't really brought over at all. So I think giving her and other changed council members new but similar names was a really good choice. Kira actually has more relatable and human motives than Yumiko, none of that chaos stuff. And unfortunately, she doesn't have a lesbian secretary side piece either. So people who like to ship her and Yumiko I'm sure are having a good time with this show. As she and Yumiko, once the rivalry comes to a head, eventually kind of decide to have a partnership. An enjoyable character, her changes work, but I will admit, before she starts getting fleshed out in the second half, she does initially come off as a flat version of Kurari. It takes a while for her to come into her own. Ryan sees Yumiko and we get a visual indicator that literally shows us how hard he's crushing on her, and he shows Yumiko around explaining the base premise. The school run by the rich and elite, built around gambling, survival of the fittest, etc. We also get a neat look at the main cast of the student council. First is Aviva Mongillo as Dory, the show's reflection to Midari, and I really liked Dory as the show went along. Sure, she starts as Midari Light, and I really was never interested in Midari beyond how she affected Yumiko. Although I liked her a lot more in the live action as Miki Yanagi, was just a lot of fun. But here Dory is still the same character, but is given a sympathetic backstory, acted well, and her obsessive tendencies explored, instead of taken to the extreme of attempted suicide and jorking it. She has a blossoming relationship with another character, Michael, that while he is initially terrified by, after she stays around when he's being a jackass, she starts to show a softer side, and he even becomes more receptive to getting her help. Although the last few episodes leave no room for him to explore this, as he's busy stuck between his dad and Yumiko. But I think if they continue this relationship, I would love to see this chaotic Dory crush explored more, as the strange dynamic allows her to be way more understandable and endearing. Next is Suki, played by Ryan Sutherland, and the show's answer to Itsuki. While annoying all the way through, especially with the house pet, which acts like a creep in moments, Suki did get a couple of laughs and a plot twist gasp out of me. To be fair, Itsuki was never my favourite character. I either didn't care about her or was annoyed at times, so on the whole, I would say Suki is worse, but I did like his gimmicks, and the performance wasn't lacking. Ryan Sutherland really put a lot of effort into being this cringe and annoying, and I really respect that, and I'm sure Suki has his fans. And I will be disappointed if he doesn't appear next season. Next, along with the large changes to Kurari, Ririka only has a few continuations as Riri, played by Unwin O'Driscoll. Riri is a really endearing character, played really cool at the start, but her growing relationship with Mary and the new family drama made her far more interesting than in the original show. And the way they've kept some of her character traits but shifted them is really interesting. Her face mask is a cool character detail, as a full comedy mask is not needed. Her identity isn't hidden, so the mask, although it may also mean something about her status, is more demonstrative of her character, her meekness, like her inability to speak, and we only really hear her mutter with her sister, and Mary is really the only one who ever gets to hear her speak at a proper volume. I'm sure the many Mary and Ririka shippers are happy, and I think I prefer these two and their relationship to those in Kakegurui XX. Ryan tries to impress upon Yumiko the severity of gambling, and she makes her way to her dorm under a fake name Yumiko Kawamoto. Which, while I was a fan of the whole devouring family stuff in the original, I think it's really interestingly explored here. Sure, I think going all the way and making sure all their last names had Barmy in it would have added a nice ridiculous flair, but I think the way they go about the rich families in this is interesting enough. Her roomie is Blake, played by Emma Ellie Patterson, and yeah, her character isn't that memorable. She's banging Chad from the student council, her dad is one of the rich elite, that's about it. The screen time she has isn't bad or anything, but not really notable, apart from her decent interactions with Yumiko in the first few episodes before, you know. Yumiko and Ryan meet again in the lunch hall, getting a lay of the land, and Yumiko gravitates to the loner Michael when he saves her from mugging with Kira. Gotta love that like 90% of Yumiko's interactions can just come off as her flirting. Miku hits that tone really well.
You're interrupting.
Now, piss off, Kira. So back to Michael, we have the other half of Ryota, but who turned into an interesting character in his own, even if it takes a little while, played by Hunter Cardinal. Now, I will admit that my favourite part of his character is what it brings out of Dory, but much like Ryan, a fair bit of Michael's character is based on his sort of crush with Yumiko, but has more interesting facets with Ryan. Michael and Yumiko having less of a romantic tension, but sometimes it does come off like that. But unlike Ryan, is firmly in the camp of stopping her foolish and crazy endeavours, like when she tries to get closer to killing his father, actively working with Kira, and having this character turn well as he gets a taste of Yumiko's crazy and almost blowing up a guy. Probably the most interesting male character, and he's set up really well for season 2. where he is now all the way against Yumiko, possibly out for revenge, and I'll be honest, I'm just hoping for the Michael Dory ship to sail. So Mary challenges Yumiko and she has another flashback to her mother, seeded well throughout the first episode, to build up the shock reveal at the end. Although to be fair, I knew shit was up when her father was doing whatever this is. She reminds her daughter that gambling is about fun and focuses on her lucky chip. Back in the present, after some nice camera work, Yumiko arrives at the gambling hall to battle Mary. And once again, not the rock, paper, scissors game. Ugh. Skirmish is still an interesting game, but not as wacky and over the top as I like.
And that's the way, I like it.
The infographics are really interesting, and while I don't love that there's moments they left out of the show, keeping Ryan as the only housepet to help Mary in cheating against Yumiko does bring it more down to earth and realistic, and is seeded well as you can see Mary occasionally look away to where Ryan is. Yumiko is out $80, but in one fell swoop manages to throw Mary into housepet status, swapping pet statuses from Ryan to her. Him now her owner. Riri personally teleporting to Mary and taking her status symbol, the cool jacket. Every club needs them. Outside with some nice camera work, Yumiko talks to Mary, nicely explaining her stance on gambling, preferring to have fun with chance, not liking cheaters, but not caring enough to out her. Ryan sees Yumiko afterwards apologising for being forced to cheat, and she once again makes her stance clear and hinting at her intentions at the school, revealing to the audience that one day her parents left and Jesus blew the fuck up. So she's at their old school, full of the people with the connections to pull the murder off to find the culprit. It's a really solid first episode, and although at the time I was still a little peeved at all the changes, it works really well as the start to its own story, and in preparing the audience from the original to stray from the source. On to episode 2, we have the last episode that follows the original's timeline, Suki being the main antagonist here, just like when Itsuki comes after Mary in the original timeline. As I said before, Ryan Sutherland plays the bratty influencer really well, but fuck do I find that annoying. So it's a little painful to watch, especially as it starts from the POV of his social media.
Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Suki, this tea is just lukewarm. What the hell are you doing?
We get to see Mary bullied, serves her right, and Yumiko destroying a bunch of randoms at different games, including the rock, paper, scissors cards. Fuck's sake! If you're gonna do it right. Stay in a lane, please, I'm begging you. Look, if they're going to bring a game from the original, I want it to have the proper gravitas, like the one from Kakegurui Season 2 that will show up later. It's a bit annoying when the iconic games are only touched upon for a second and then discarded. But to be fair, this is pretty much the only time it happens. The council intimidate Yumiko, Suki mugging the whole time, and it's revealed St. Dominic's runs on a house system. How very Hogwarts. This is another idea that's new for the story, as I don't recall anything like this in the anime. So while a little played out in pop culture, I find the whole Heart Spade Diamond Club motif very fitting. We get a look into the council room as they look to take Yumiko on, Kira sicking Suki on her, and we get another strange Riri and Mary interaction. Riri's infatuation seeming to start, but that's kind of confused with the fact she may just be mocking Mary in the moment. It's not very clear. Out of nowhere, a beaver-looking mascot starts stalking Ryan, and as Mary criticizes him, Suki comes around to challenge Yumiko. We get more Yumiko flashbacks showing a guy threatening her parents vaguely, and in the present she makes her way to the library, looking for clues, interrupted by Michael, who sets up his whole complex with his father. Yumiko divulges her parents' deaths and asks Michael if he can help scrub the info from the internet, which Suki is sure to scour for ways to get in her head. Blake already having invited Suki into their room for a look around, way to enforce the ditzy blonde stereotype. Yumiko and Michael work on some fake drama for her, which once again proves this show is at its best when it's most strange and ridiculous.
Okay, I never cheated. Should be more scandalous. Perhaps I sold ketamine?
Ketamine, obviously.
And as the game is revealed, Icebreaker, each person has time to ask questions to the other based on the cards on the table, and those whose heart rate exceeds a certain point loses. Suki is actually really entertaining as he tries to be cruel and fails until he steals her lucky chip. Suki gets to show off his nail collection. Yeah, I buy this insanity much more than Itsuki's. Both of their social faces are annoying, but Ryan plays creepy really well. The graphics are cool, and each time Suki gets in Yumiko's head, he talks about the nails again, which just buys time for her to survive, not as smart as he likes to think. The nails probably being the thing that affects her the least. Michael comes in clutch, Yumiko and him sowing chaos by making side bets. And there's my girl, Runa. Okay, so Runa, played by Laura Afelsky. Yes, that's right. The house pet everyone thought was Runa was thankfully a different character. You can stop commenting so on my short that was purely about speculation. Seriously, one of my shorts blew up here and on TikTok of the original video where I speculated, as many did at the time, that this was a Runa recast, as she was unseen in the original trailer. So I commented when the show came out that I was wrong and it was speculation. This did not work, as I kept getting comments about how I'm lying, and it got so bad Laura herself commented, not having read my post, that the video was outdated, and confirmed that she was in fact Runa and not Rami Kana's Rex. A little embarrassing for me. Anyway, Runa doesn't have a lot to do, really, in either continuity, but she fits the role perfectly, plays fair, and the multiple outfits are all cute. She also has the mascot sidekick that'll come to her head later. This is another example of, I think, me liking the Bet version of the character better, as Laura Felsky has a much more endearing and interesting attitude than Runa in the original does, where she gets to act cute all the time and only has 1 or 2 moments of seriousness. Yumiko thrashes Suki by exploiting his violent past, and turning his own criticism on trends back on him, leading to him running out like a little bitch.
Ugly bitches don't look at me! It's okay.
And Kira having to punish him, and considering he vanishes after Kira talks with him, many assume he is very dead. Ryan is once again chased by the mascot in a Scooby-Doo-like chase, throwing his chips in and getting the beaver off his back. Michael reveals that the side bets are catching on and that he likes Yumiko, but is suspicious considering she has no online presence at all. And of course, Sugi's apparent death leaves the episode on a nice cliffhanger, and with Rex devastated. Both episodes ending with deaths. What a happy little trend. So those were the first 2 episodes of Bet, not yet in its own narrative path, but basing itself off the beginning of Kakegurui's story, and with small changes to fit in its own world. An interesting start, but we'll have to see if the series keeps interest as it goes. Thank you everybody for watching my first review of Bet. The next will be on their way soon. Please like the video if you liked it, comment down below if you wish, consider subscribing to the channel, and if you do, ring the notification bell so that you're told every single time that I make an upload. Once again, apologies to Laura Felsky, and I will see you in the next review. Bye!
Toast. A little piece of toast. Because there's so much to choose from. There's brown bread, white bread, all sorts of wholemeal bread. It comes in funny packages with writing on the side.